We're pleased to have two senior representatives from the Australian Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry with us today. Chris Dale, Director, International Capacity Development, share insights into Australia's approach to supporting international market access and exporter capability. We're also joined by Dr. Sophie Peterson, Director, Pacific Engagement and International Plant Health, who will walk us through market access pathways, BICON, exporter requirements, and potential future opportunities for Pacific exporters. We are also pleased to have Brad Small, Technical Officer, Horticultural Imports Program, Plant Division at DAFF, who will present a live demonstration of BICON and will walk through a practical case study. Between them, Chris, Sophie and Brad bring a wealth of experience and practical knowledge. We're grateful for their willingness to share that expertise with Pacific businesses today. We hope today's discussion provides practical information that you can use when preparing your business for export and gives you greater confidence in understanding Australia's import requirements. Before handing over to Chris, Sophie and Brad, I'd like to briefly introduce PTI Australia. PTI Australia is a trade promotion and facilitation office of the Pacific Islands Forum. As part of a network of offices around the world, our role is to help Pacific exporters understand international markets, build export readiness, and connect with opportunities overseas. We do this through practical market advice, exporter support, buyer engagement, trade events, and capability building activities. Our focus is on helping Pacific businesses take the next step towards entering, growing, and succeeding in export markets such as Australia. Australia remains one of the Pacific's most important export markets, but is also a market with specific rules and requirements that exporters need to understand before they invest time, money, and effort into exporting. Across retail stores throughout Australia, we're seeing products such as frozen cassava and taro, coconut products, kava, coffee, honey, vanilla, spices, coconut, cacao, and more. These products are finding their way onto supermarket shelves, into specialty retailers, and into the hands of buyers looking for high-quality Pacific products. The opportunity and purpose of today's webinar is to help more Pacific exporters understand their requirements, overcome the common barriers, and build the confidence needed to enter and grow in the Australian market. Understanding Australia's biosecurity and market access requirements is a critical part of the journey, and one of the reasons we're pleased to have DAFF joining us today. We're seeing primary agricultural commodities such as root crops, cacao, coconuts, green coffee beans, entering the Australian market in good volumes. These products have found a market among Australian buyers interested in diverse food ingredients. Some of the most popular commodities on the screen now: fresh coconuts from Samoa on the shelves of Coles and Woolworths. Coles supermarkets alone has over 850 stores. Fresh taro from Fiji and Pacific stores, and vanilla sold online from PNG. There are genuine opportunities for Pacific exporters when market requirements are understood and met. Pacific exporters are also having success in premium and value-added categories. Products such as coffee, honey, chocolate, kava, premium beverages increasingly being positioned around quality, provenance, and the unique story behind products and their producers. These products often compare on quality and differentiation rather than price alone. Examples on the screen include packaged coffee and chocolate from PNG and Vanuatu, as well as kava on the shelves of Coles, one of Australia's major supermarket chains. These products demonstrate opportunities beyond traditional commodity exports for businesses that can help develop strong brands, consistent quality, and compelling market positioning. We can see that plenty of products are succeeding in the Australian market. What we hear from exporters time and time again is producing a quality product is only part of the journey. Businesses also need to understand market access requirements, documentation, logistics, buyer expectations, very important, and ultimately what it takes to get a product successfully into market. Through our Pacific Islands Export Survey, through our direct work with exporters across the region, we see many of the same challenges emerge repeatedly. Businesses consistently tell us that they need better information, greater clarity around requirements, and more confidence to navigate export markets successfully. That's why today's session is so valuable. We're very fortunate to have these experts from the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry with us today to help unpack some of that complexity. Please join me in welcoming Chris Dale, Director of International Capacity Development, Dr. Sophie Peterson, Director of Pacific Engagement and International Plant Health, and Brad Small, the Technical Officer in DAFF's Horticultural Imports Program within the Plant Division. Chris, Sophie and Brad, thank you for all joining us. I'll first hand over to Chris to give his presentation.
Thank you, Jeremy, and good morning, everyone. It's great to see such a very extensive group of participants on the webinar.
Over to Chris, and we'll get it up and running. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy, and good morning to everyone. Just doing a quick sound check to make sure everyone can hear me okay.
Everything's good. Thanks, Dale.
Thank you very much. Well, Wulawami Nijuan, that's a traditional welcome from here on the far south coast of New South Wales, where I am joining you from today. And as is tradition for all of our meetings and forums and talanoas with DAFF, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the country and all the lands in which we meet today. So my name is Chris Dale. I'm the Director of International Capacity Development, as Jeremy pointed out, and I lead a team of technical specialists within the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries in a number of bilateral and regional programs across the region to support biosecurity, to support trade and market access, and really to promote biosecurity opportunities to support economic development, both intra-regionally and internationally. Next slide, thanks. So within the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries and the division in which I work, which is the Office of the Chief Plant Protection Office, we're very fortunate, along with Dr. Sophie Peterson and myself, to work very closely with our Pacific counterparts in biosecurity and plant protection, and also in the private sector space. And we work very closely with the Farmer Plus program and MDF and a number of the bilateral programs for several years in really coordinating and promoting biosecurity technical support to our plant protection and our biosecurity counterparts across the region. So I guess by way of background, our DAFF International Capacity Development team, we coordinate and deliver biosecurity programs and activities and workshops across the Asia-Pacific region. And we're currently managing and delivering several regional and bilateral programs that I'll talk about as part of this presentation. So we're quite fortunate that we have a mix of technical and operational expertise in border biosecurity, trade and market access, in scientific plant protection, surveillance and diagnostics, and a whole range of different scientific expertise. And really what our team does and our mandate is to really support biosecurity agencies across the region in strengthening their biosecurity system to support and facilitate and maintain good trade and market access opportunities, but also to strengthen their biosecurity to really provide really strong governance and confidence in the plant protection and biosecurity system. Next slide, please. So I guess as we talk about our biosecurity system today, and as Dr. Sophie and Brad provide more specific and technical detail around our import plant conditions and arrangements, it's really important to understand our Australian biosecurity continuum and our system, particularly in the plant biosecurity space and how that works. So as you may be aware, as most of the biosecurity and plant protection and quarantine systems in the region have transferred or transitioned to a more biosecurity approach of pre-border, border, and post-border. It's very important to understand our trade arrangements and regulations and conditions to really understand the system. So if we're able to press the YouTube video and activate that, please. Okay, so there might be just with the presentation. So I'm happy to talk through the biosecurity continuum, but essentially we don't work within Australian biosecurity, and for most biosecurity arrangements and systems across the region, it's very important to consider biosecurity from a pre-border, border, and a post-border perspective. So managing biosecurity risk doesn't just start at the border and when consignments arrive at the seaport, containers arrive at the seaport, passengers move through the airport with their baggage and the like. It starts well before that around negotiations and bilateral agreements and arrangements offshore, and that is really the space that our team work in providing a lot of that technical support and advice in the pre-border space to really try and manage and mitigate the risk offshore. All right. So I guess just in the interest of the presentation, we might give that video a miss if it's a bit troublesome, PTI colleagues. But essentially, our biosecurity system is based on international standards and international arrangements. So having that consistency at the regional level and the international level is really important. So all of the activities that we conduct, both at the pre-border, and that might be around export audits and pre-clearance and assurance around risk assessment and test risk assessment and analysis arrangements is all part of our pre-border, border and post-border activity. And obviously in biosecurity for Australia, we have responsibility of coordinating when we do get pest incursions and detections, coordinating that activity. So our responsibilities don't just lie or start at the border, at the seaport and the airport, and those traditional quarantine functions. Essentially, it's a very consolidated approach across the pre-border, border and post-border perspective. So in the international context, again, I know from a trade perspective, there's often a lot of misconception around countries applying unreasonable biosecurity or quarantine measures. But everything that we do in DAFF and for biosecurity agencies across the region are guided by international standards and international arrangements. So I'm just going to talk quickly around the international context. Next slide, please. And it's important to note that all of the work that we do within plant protection and plant biosecurity is guided through the international, or guided by the International Plant Protection Convention, or the IPPC. So Australia is a member of the IPPC, along with 184 other member countries, most of which the Pacific representatives are. And we are guided by all of our biosecurity and phytosanitary functions through international standards for phytosanitary measures, or ISPMs. So these are really the benchmarks for trade in plant commodities, and they provide that guidance to ensure that we have that consistency and harmonisation across the international plant protection and trade system. So really the ISPMs, amongst providing support around preventing introduction and establishment of plant pests, preventing environmental pests as well. Really, one of the key drivers is to facilitate international trade in a fair and consistent approach. Next slide, please. So we're very fortunate within DAFF and within the region that we have very strong representation on the IPBC. And we have Dr. Sophie Peterson, who is the chair of the Standards Committee, which is one of the most crucial roles in the IPBC of being providing the guidance and the governance around developing these international standards. So these international standards are globally applicable. It doesn't matter how well developed or established your biosecurity system is, or your resources, or your technical expertise. The international standards, or ISPMs, are consistent for all member countries. So there are a number of export and trade facilitation specific ISPMs, and the export certification guide there provides a really good step-by-step guide and understanding of how that certification process works for exports for national plant protection organisations. So there are standards and there are guidance materials and a lot of fact sheets and information on the IPBC website, which I've provided there in hyperlink. Next slide, please. As well as guidance materials. So it's very important, I guess, if you are looking at entering into new trade agreements, bilateral trade agreements, and for a particular commodity, to really sort of understand what's the basis of decision-making processes for the biosecurity and quarantine agencies. Why are these import conditions in place? How are they, consistent across countries and across the region and globally? So there's an opportunity for you to actually, do some of that research and do some of that learning as well. There's some great guidance materials available, like achieving market access for plant products, that instead of just relying on your biosecurity or plant protection counterparts to provide you that advice, you can also do your own research and understand the system at that global level. So really encourage you to access the IPBC website, access some of these online training resources like the e-learning for this particular course for market access, if you really want to understand the background and the basis of how the international trade system works from a plant protection and phytosanitary perspective. Next slide, please. So from an international level, we then get down to the regional context. So we're very fortunate within DAFF that we have a biosecurity strategy, which again, Sophie was one of the sort of lead authors on that strategy development a number of years ago. That provides, I guess, our guidance and mandate from DAFF and from our technical teams to really structure a lot of our biosecurity support and engagement across the region. The Pacific, as everybody knows, is very different to other regions across the globe, geographically, culturally, from a trade perspective. Our agricultural systems are very different. So it's very important for us in DAFF to provide, to have that strategic guidance and framework by which we undertake our technical support, we undertake our trade and market access activities to deliver our biosecurity and phytosanitary systems. And this strategy has allowed us to facilitate activities such as the regional sea container strategy and workshop activities that really sort of bring together all of the key government agencies in biosecurity and phytosanitary measures, stakeholders from both industry, donors, specific, infrastructure and logistical expertise as well. So the sea container work that we've been doing over the last 2 years is a really good example of how that strategy really does strengthen these regional biosecurity and phytosanitary systems. Next slide, please. So we're very fortunate within the Pacific that we have a very strong regional plant protection organisation in the PPO. So again, I can see there's a number of representatives from the PPO and the countries online today. Again, Sophie's been a very is our sort of lead representative on that, along with our Chief Plant Protection Officer, Dr. Rosa Surnoff. And we have a very long history with PPO through our collaboration with other Chief Plant Protection Officers to really coordinate and strengthen our regional approach to biosecurity, to plant protection and phytosanitary measures. And again, there's that provides the mandate to look at regional systems, and so there's a number of products and systems that through PPO, like the Pest List database. Most recently, we've developed standard operating procedures and work instructions for PPO countries to perform those harmonised border biosecurity functions. So the PPO is a really important, a really valuable mechanism and platform for coordination and governance of plant protection and biosecurity across the region. And that is really where a lot of the technical and capacity development support activities are prioritised. And then it's programs like ours that go and, I guess, sort of deliver or implement a lot of those regional initiatives or strategies. Next slide, please. So we're very fortunate within DAFF to have funding from DFAT through the Office of the Pacific to implement a Pacific Biosecurity Partnership Program. So the program was developed in 2019 and implemented in 2020, and really it supports regional implementation and harmonisation of sanitary and phytosanitary measures for both plant and animal health. And really, it's one of the key priorities is to facilitate agricultural trade and market access technical support in close collaboration with regional programs such as FAO, PACER Plus, Farmer Plus up until June 30, and MDF and importantly SBC and the Land and Resources Division. So we work to support a lot of those training and capacity development initiatives at a bilateral and regional level. And that might be through facilitating export inspections, through Pacific Export Pathway training. And many of you may have been part or participated in the Pacific Export Pathway training that we delivered over the past 3 years across the region, specific in certain countries, but specific to those key commodities, to really sort of support and identify those areas on the pathway of biosecurity and phytosanitary concern. Next slide, please. So in addition to our work at the regional level and really harmonising those biosecurity and phytosanitary systems across all the PPO countries, we also have a number of programs that are specific to bilateral biosecurity technical support. Next slide, please. So for Papua New Guinea, we have a Papua New Guinea Biosecurity Twinning Program. Again, we're very fortunate to be funded by DFAT for this program. It's a 3-year program at the moment, just been extended for an additional year. And that's really supporting at the moment the transition from PNG NACIA to now PNG Biosecurity Authority, and providing technical training, institutional training, given that PNG Biosecurity has new legislation, they have a new policy, they have a whole range of institutional changes. They're increasing staffing quite considerably. It's a really great opportunity for us to work with our biosecurity counterparts in PNG, not to just strengthen their border biosecurity, but to look at initiatives like phytosanitary and export certification, e-phyto implementation, a whole range of other trade facilitation mechanisms. Next slide, please. The Solomon Islands Biosecurity Development Program is our longest running bilateral technical program in DAFF, which is great given that a number of us have been part of the program since it started back in 2013. So again, this is really supporting a whole range of biosecurity functions in trade and market access, border biosecurity, technical plant protection, and animal health. And this program's been running since 2013, so very long-standing. Very fortunate to have Semi Sikanoto, who many of you may know from Pharma Plus or from DAFF, is based in Honiara. He provides a lot of technical support and trade and market access advice and facilitation work through the program. And again, it's proved a really important program to support and complement trade and market access priorities and aspirations within Solomon Islands, particularly from the bilateral biosecurity Solomon Islands to DAFF perspective. Next slide, please. We've also been fortunate. We've worked with Vanuatu Biosecurity, and I saw that our colleague Lyndon is online. So our work there has been specifically around border biosecurity, but we've also done work around, looking at trade facilitation and export facilitation. And so again, that's been a really important program to really look at where we can support through our bilateral arrangements some of those trade and market access commodities that are at the point, potentially at the point of being ready for trade, but also looking at those areas of things like packhouse inspection and audits and the like. Next slide, please. So our most recent bilateral program is the Fiji Biosecurity Development Program, which is very new. It only started this month, but this is a 2-year program supporting both BAFF and the Ministry in Fiji around a whole range of technical phytosanitary and animal health initiatives. And again, really sort of looking at some of those areas to strengthen the confidence of the biosecurity and plant protection and phytosanitary system. So we're very privileged, again, to be funded by DFAT for this program, but we're hoping this will be a really good opportunity to sort of strengthen those bilateral arrangements between BAFF and our team here in DAFF. Next slide, please. So in terms of bilateral technical support, so whilst a lot of our work is very much focused on technical exchange, sharing, implementing some of the tools and the systems and the technical training that we have developed in DAFF. We've also provide technical support around particular commodities or particular pests. We've contributed to the carver management work that was facilitated and commissioned through Pharma Plus. We've done a lot of work on transboundary pests like fall armyworm and Fusarium TR4, specific to individual pests. So they're really important initiatives for us to contribute to, given our sort of technical expertise, not just in DAFF, but across our industries, our states and territories. But obviously, there's a lot of technical support that we're able to provide through our programs at DAFF. Next slide, please. So importantly, there's a lot of ongoing trade and market access opportunities. Obviously, there's a number of the strategic drivers at the regional level around economic development and facilitating and promoting intra-regional trade, and that's obviously a big priority for PACER Plus and other regional programs. But where we contribute is really sort of looking at where we can provide technical assistance around systems like alternate treatments and how we can support. It might be through technical advice or workshops. It might be through auditing and providing technical expertise of the export pathway. But from a DAFF perspective, we obviously have a sort of cohort of experts that we draw on and have sort of contributed over many years to a lot of the ongoing and aspirational market access opportunities. And really what we're trying to do too is sort of identify where some of those barriers to exporting are, which again has been identified through the PTI barriers to exporting report, and really looking at where, if possible, our programs can provide that technical support to really sort of address some of those issues and nuances, and also sort of provide that strengthen the systems to prevent and maintain market access. Next slide, please. So PTI around providing statistics and information around a lot of the arrangements. There's work that we expedite at the broader trade market there. There's the report for the import requirements for capsicum across multiple countries: Fiji, PNG, Samoa, Solomon Islands, Tonga and Vanuatu. And we also contribute to information and data around the export surveys that PTI obviously consolidate and facilitate. Next slide, please. And obviously, the PTI team will talk about the reporting, but we're very fortunate to sort of contribute to the regional trade reporting, and that's a way that we can really sort of provide some of that core information and data around specific commodities, types of processed commodities, but also country of origin, to really sort of support a lot of that work. So again, it's a great collaboration between our program and Pacific Trade Invest. Next slide, please. So thank you. Again, that was a very quick overview of the work we do in the region. Very happy for you to reach out to me directly on my email on the slide there, as well as our team, icds@aff.gov.au. And thank you very much for your time today. Thank you, Chair.
And thanks for that, Chris. It was a great presentation. I'd like to hand over to Sophie now to kick off her maximising existing market access opportunities for Pacific Island countries and territories. Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you might be across the region. So my presentation, I'm very happy for PTI to make it available to everyone. It does contain a few links throughout that might be useful to look at after the presentation. So as before, I'm Sophie Peterson, Pacific Engagement Manager for Plant Biosecurity for within the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. I do have an animal biosecurity and animal health counterpart, but I will be focusing mainly on plant product import today, but I'm very happy to take questions throughout or after the session that I can direct to my animal colleagues. It's just a lot of the trade that we have is mainly plant focused. Next slide, please. So for market access, the conduct of a pest risk analysis and then development of import conditions is only one piece of the puzzle, and every trading country does this. All of the countries that you are joining from will conduct pest risk analysis of some kind and then determine what conditions or measures they need to put in place to maintain your pest and disease status in your country, maintain your way of life, and the ability for countries to trade. So there are a number of other factors that contribute to success of a market, and I know that you're probably all aware of these, but this includes production volumes and then maintenance of that volume to maintain market share, meeting the requirements of the importing country, ensuring that there's a market demand and hopefully growth for the products that you're trying to export. And as linked to, I guess, volume and maintenance of volume and the supply chain as a whole, that market access or market share maintenance. Next slide, please. So the majority of Pacific Island countries and territories currently have market access for a number of plant products into Australia. The majority of this access is for products that is processed to some extent, and that's because the processing actions that the product goes through removes or mitigates some of the biosecurity or phytosanitary concerns that Australia might have, or the pest risk that we have identified in the fresh product that needs to be addressed. Processing products can also increase the shelf life and reduces the perishability of the product, meaning that if there are issues with the supply chain, which we do experience in the region because of availability of containers or just the way that ships move through the region or are interrupted by natural disasters, it means that that product isn't then lost as part of that interruption. There's also access for fresh products, but there are more limited commodity lines where you have access for these products. And also it's very country specific because each country has different pests in it that we might want to keep out of Australia. And also each country has different treatments available just because of infrastructure issues across the region. Next slide, please. So I do have some examples of access for PICs for fresh product. And as I said in the previous slide, this is noting that access and the specific import conditions for each country may vary because of the different pest status. But some examples are coconut, both mature and immature, and we saw some images of those in Coles in previous PTI slides. Leafy greens, like island cabbage and beetle leaf, taro, so importantly it's Colocasia esculenta, and then the xanthosoma, so the white taro, yams and cassava. So they are some of the products that fresh access is available, but you do need to confirm the country that you're from and the conditions that might specifically apply. What I would say is that we do get a lot of inquiries about exporting fresh product to Australia because it is seen as, I guess, an easier pathway where you grow, harvest and send, but there are other issues with the supply chain that I've talked about with regard to making sure there is a supply chain, but also a lot of access is not available to all countries because either those treatments aren't available in your country or there hasn't been a pest risk assessment done for your specific country and that specific commodity. Next slide, please. From a processed product perspective, there's a lot more available and many more options. So fruit, for example, including banana pulp, and vegetables, including taro, can be imported into Australia frozen. And I've got the links to the specific BICON cases here. And I will just pause to say that BICON is a database on the DAFF website that includes all of our import conditions. So it stands for Biosecurity Import Condition Database. And I do have Brad presenting after this presentation to do a bit of a step through. It is a very large database, but persevere and you'll find the conditions that you need. But if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. The other access that countries have is coffee beans. So that's green beans and roasted, because I know that there are some other customs and tax issues that are related to those commodities, whether they're imported green and roasted, and also shelf life issues. So that's a a business decision about how you'd prefer to import those. And then coconut oil is also a commodity that can be imported. Next slide, please. The other one that's probably a bit more new but has been around for a while now is kava, so both the dry powdered and frozen, and there's the link to the kava BICON case there. Vanilla beans obviously are processed as part of their production, normal production practice, so vanilla beans do have access with several conditions that can be found there. And the other commodity that we receive very many queries about is ginger. So ginger is not able to be imported from any country fresh from the Pacific except for Fiji, but countries do have access for ginger that is either for processing if you have an arrangement with a authorised arrangement processing site, so a specially verified site that will process that ginger, and it has to be imported under a permit. Dried ginger is also access for dried ginger is also available, and preserved, so it could be glacé or crystallized ginger. So there are opportunities for ginger, but the opportunities for fresh ginger are very limited at this time. Next slide, please. So I did also want to draw attention to some new opportunities that perhaps haven't been taken advantage of as much as they could have to date. So the most recent pest risk analyses that the department had done for Pacific commodities was capsicum from those countries listed there. So an assessment for fresh capsicum fruit from Fiji, Papua New Guinea, Samoa, Solomon Islands, Tonga and Vanuatu. And the link to that document is there. We don't have that pathway operating as yet for all of those countries. So there's opportunity there, if there are growers in those countries, to talk to our department, develop a work program between our department and your local biosecurity agency, and then progress utilisation of that access. The other one is breadfruit from Fiji, Samoa and Tonga. And again, the pest risk analysis link is there, but we've had no country or the government or biosecurity agency from the relevant countries have not approached us to utilise that pathway yet. And that really indicates to us that perhaps there's no, there's either no awareness that it's available is one thing, or that there perhaps isn't the production volume or the need to export it. It could be that markets already exist or it's used locally. Some other opportunities are also, of course, investigating those numerous opportunities available for processed products. And I know that this is something that we talk about a lot with exporters from across the region. Processed products does require infrastructure to some extent to process that product, get the reefers to enable the frozen product to be exported from your country. But there really are many more opportunities there available that perhaps could be used more. Next slide, please. So the export process and doing it successfully really does rely on knowing the import conditions of the country you're sending it to. And that goes for Australia, New Zealand, the US, whichever, and each other between countries or Pacific Islands, knowing what the import conditions are and being able to meet them. But it also ensures that there are non-biosecurity things in place along the supply chain, including the volumes. There are brokers available to assist moving that product through the supply chain, that there's an importer at the other end and a market to sell the product. It's really important that you work with your local government agency responsible for biosecurity. And I can see online a number of colleagues from biosecurity agencies across the region, there is really not an easy way to export products that require certification without your local government, because from a national level, there could be a requirement to do an inspection of your consignments and then provide a phytosanitary certificate. There may be a requirement for you to provide the permit that you have for your product to the agencies to allow them to ensure that they can certify. So it really is important that you, before you export, you not only reach out to the country that you want to export to, but you also develop a relationship with your local biosecurity agency, because they really can assist with understanding the conditions and ensuring that all of your paperwork that's required is provided in the format and with the correct declarations that are required. Because, as my last point on this slide, without the correct paperwork and the correct declarations or attestations on that paperwork, your consignment will be rejected at the border, and it may be that nothing can be done to facilitate its movement across the border. Next slide, please. The other thing I wanted to highlight, besides just the biosecurity issues, are some other considerations, and that includes imported food considerations and food safety. So some commodities, like those containing cassava, will have additional food safety requirements, and that can include taking additional samples for testing. So a lot of you as exporters will be familiar with samples being taken from a biosecurity perspective to make sure that the consignment meets the biosecurity import requirements. But sometimes, depending on the commodity, additional samples will need to be taken from your consignment to allow for this other food safety or other testing to occur. There are some commodities, like giant taro, for example, that are unable to be imported commercially. They're only allowed to be imported for personal use, so they come in with passenger baggage through an airport in the main. But it's actually illegal for them to be imported to be sold commercially. Other products like kava, which is now being imported as a food into Australia, have other specific requirements. So, for example, some examples from the kava perspective is that it has to be noble kava, and there are particular labelling requirements that we provide and that are checked on import. I do have a link here from my imported food colleagues for how to import food into Australia, a step-by-step guide. It's on the DAFF website, but if this is circulated, that link will be available to you to look at to see if your particular commodity has these additional considerations to address. Next slide, please. So other commodities that are often imported or we get queries about include handicraft and cosmetics, because they often have a mixture of both excuse me, animal products and plant products in their construction or their formulation. So I've just provided a link here to the handicraft overview. So it's simply putting into BICON Pacific handicrafts, and it will come up with a number of options. And the same for cosmetics, because I can't provide the particular import requirements for cosmetics and soaps, because it does vary depending on the percentage of animal product within the formulation. So these import conditions can be quite specific. Where we have plant and animal ingredients, they can be quite specific to the particular formulation of your particular product. Next slide, please. So I guess in conclusion, there are several new opportunities available for exporters from the Pacific region into Australia. And the ones that we have seem to have limited use, especially a lot of those processed products. So we really do value your feedback on the plant biosecurity or phytosanitary issues or other impediments that you as exporters or even as biosecurity agencies within the region are facing when trying to export products to Australia. It would really help us understand what those problems are and if there are other ways to alleviate those impediments, because though we might provide particular treatments in our import risk assessments, the research and other work into treatments and their equivalence with each other continues. So it could be that we could discuss another option for a treatment if the one specified isn't possible in your country, or if there's some other impact that we're unaware of. And as I said before, engagement through your relevant National Plant Protection Organisation, or NPPO, so that's just your agency responsible for plant biosecurity, is really encouraged, because they too can come to us with the issues that they might face in certifying your exports, and we can try to have a discussion and work through what the issues are and find a suitable resolution. So my last slide is next, which is really just the contact details for myself, as well as Carissa Miller, who is my counterpart, the Pacific Engagement Manager for Animal Biosecurity and Animal Health. And I do thank you all for your time and for coming today. I'll now hand over to, I guess, PTI and Brad. Brad's going to go through a little demonstration of BICON, so those unfamiliar can see what it looks like. And then it might demystify it a bit. Thank you, PTI. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sophie, for a great presentation. We're just getting Brad set up, and once he's ready to roll, we'll continue with Brad's segment of the presentation.
Just need to unmute himself.
Just need to unmute yourself, Brad. We're ready to roll.
Sorry, could I just get some confirmation that that everyone can hear me online? Perfect, thank you. Sorry about that. I'll just share my screen. Here we are. Hello, my name is Brad. I work in the Horticulture Imports team for the Australian Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. My role is to maintain the department's import systems to facilitate trade of fresh fruit and vegetables into Australia. This includes Australia's import condition database, or BICON. Today I'm going to give a short demonstration of how to use BICON to view Australia's import conditions, including offshore requirements that must occur prior to the goods arriving in Australia. So I'm just going to walk through a quick example for taro. So there's three search options on BICON, on the BICON homepage. The first one's a quick search where you can just search the common name of the commodity, such as taro. There's also the scientific name, where you can search the scientific name of taro if you know it, or the tariff code if you also know that. So 0714, for example. The simplest way and the way most people use is to just use the quick search button. So I'll just use that for my example. I'll just search taro. So once you search for a commodity, there will be several results that vary depending on the end use and the level of processing, for example. So for this example, I'm talking about the fresh fruit vegetable that's intended for human consumption in Australia. So the case that would apply would be the fresh fruit vegetables for human consumption BICON case. And you can click that link here and it gives a description of what this case covers. So this case describes the requirements for the importation of fresh fruit vegetables for human consumption. So I'll just select the BICON case. So to start with, you just click next. So in order to get to the import conditions, we just need to define the import scenario. So the first question that's asked is what is the root vegetable that is being imported? And in this example, we'll click taro, select next. Now, there are different import conditions depending on the variety of taro that is being imported. For this example, I will talk through taro tubers, which belongs to Colocasia. Now, for taro tubers, there are some varieties that are permitted or not permitted. And we have an image guide to assist the end user in determining what the variety is. So this just talks through the morphology of the visual appearance of the vegetable, which would need to be used to determine which variety it is that's being imported. So I just select the first one as an example. So for this particular variety, this is unable to be imported into Australia currently because there isn't any risk management measures to address these particular diseases on the pathway. So I'll just go back. I'll select this variety. And for example, Fiji as the exporting country. So this is basically the landing page. So these are the import conditions that apply to fresh taro tubers of this species and variety from Fiji. So within this, it's separated down into import conditions prior to arrival into Australian territory. So this is basically everything that will need to occur prior to it arriving in Australia. So for this particular example, it needs to be inspected and certified by the exporting country as being a country free from taro leaf blight. And it also must be fumigated prior to arrival in Australia. This talks about the specific morphology, which is used to determine if it's the permitted species or not. There's also this view onshore outcomes section, which talks about how the goods will be treated once it actually arrives in Australia. So assuming the phytosanitary requirement is provided and it meets all the requirements as outlined in the previous page, there will be this option. So all the requirements have been met, and it will first undergo a document assessment to ensure that all of the import documentation is correct and meets our import requirements. Once once it is met, it will then proceed for inspection to verify that it's free from pests and diseases and meets import conditions. If it passes inspection, it will then be released from biosecurity control. So I'll just go back to the overview. So if you create a BICON account and log in, you can select this follow case option, which will basically whenever we change any import conditions within this case, you will receive an email notification to the email that you signed up to BICON with. And that's just a good way of keeping informed of any significant changes to the requirements for this that fall within the scope of this particular BICON case. There's also a case history section. One thing to note is that there is an effective period for different historical cases. So only the most current case can be used to actually clear goods from biosecurity control in Australia. So it's important to check that the effective date is the most current one. Sometimes with hyperlinks, and when you save a link, it can link you to an outdated or a historical case. So that's just something to be mindful of, just to ensure that the effective date is from the most recent one to current, basically. So this is the most recent version, and this is an example of a historical case that couldn't be used. It's just there for information purposes. There's also, within this related information section of BICON, there is a risk background. So if you're wondering why certain measures are in place, why certain requirements need to be met in order to export to Australia, this just provides a good high-level overview of the pest and disease that we're looking to regulate for the commodities that fall within this case. There's also this BICON help button. So if you ever get stuck on how to use BICON, you can select this option, and it has several task cards on how to use BICON, basically, and to navigate to the import conditions for the commodity you're looking to export or import into Australia. There is also a email contact that you can reach out to, which I'll pop into the chat. So if you have any questions about the import requirements for importing a specific commodity into Australia, the best place is to email imports@aff.gov.au, which I'll pop into the chat, and we can provide you specific advice depending on the circumstances, because the import conditions are very circumstantial. It depends on a number of things. So a couple of other examples are, you can search for soaps, for example, and there's a case for soaps that you can navigate through, just depending on the specific scenario. There are also little information parts that help you assist in answering the questions to best find what you're looking to import, basically. So I'll provide a link to BICON in the chat, as well as that email where we can help address any questions and help facilitate trade into Australia. I might wrap up the presentation there and hand back to PTI.
Thank you, Chris, Sophie and Brad. That was extremely informative, and we greatly appreciate the time and expertise you have shared with us and our Pacific exporters today. We'll now move into the Q&A session. We received a number of questions prior to today's webinar, and the DAFF team will do their best to respond to those queries. If you have any additional questions, please submit them via the chat, and we'll answer as many as time permits. If we are unable to address your question today, we will follow up and respond to it at a later stage. So one of the questions we received prior to the webinar was from Fiji in regards to agriculture and in particular floriculture. They're wanting to get more clarification as to what steps need to be taken if we were wanting to export orchids, anthuriums from Nadi, Fiji into Australia.
So I'm happy to start. Thank you. And there are people from the imported horticulture area online. I think they're still with us. But you can look up cut flowers and foliage in BICON, and then you select the Orchidae and Anthurium from the checkbox, and it provides some conditions depending on, again, how the volume. So there are different conditions if it's a very small volume compared to a larger volume. But I guess the issue is that if it's from Fiji, there is a requirement for fumigation, and it might just depend on whereabouts in Fiji it's being shipped from, and whether there's a fumigation facility between where you're growing the commodity and where it's exiting the country, whether it's Suva, Lautoka or Nadi. There is the potential to have a different disinfestation that isn't pre-shipment fumigation, but it might require a bit more discussion with our imported horticulture team to ensure that whatever that method is acceptable. And I would also say that with whichever method you use, a phytosanitary certificate with declarations needs to be provided by Biosecurity Authority of Fiji. So you will need to talk to Biosecurity Authority of Fiji, who will in turn talk to our department to make sure that the paperwork is correct. But I did just want to hand over and check that there was nothing else Hort Imports wanted to add. Maybe they can't unmute. Yep. So the people from Hort Exports aren't able to unmute and add answers to the question. So I hope that I've represented the import conditions for flowers correctly. And yes, thank you, Doug. Next question, Maeva.
The next question, exporting fresh taro directly to Brisbane from Fiji. What are the requirements, and what about frozen taro?
Yep, so frozen taro is a lot easier, and the import conditions, the link is in the presentation that I provided earlier. Taro from Fiji is, let me just find the import conditions that I had on my screen. The country of origin as Fiji is okay because Fiji does not have taro blight, so Phytophthora colocaceae, which is the pathogen that we're really worried about on fresh taro, which is why some countries from the Pacific are unable to export fresh taro. So the conditions are on the website, but from Fiji, you don't need a permit. There is a requirement for a phytosanitary certificate again from Biosecurity Authority of Fiji, and there is a requirement for methyl bromide fumigation. So the conditions are there quite clearly. It gives the requirements in terms of the treatment with methyl bromide, like the exposure, time, temperature and dosage, and the requirement for that certification. As in Brad's presentation, there also has to be an attestation that it's Colocasia esculenta that is in the shipment. frozen taro, just it needs to be frozen and arrive frozen, which it can't arrive like thawed. So there will be a requirement to have a reefer to keep that product in the condition that it leaves. It has to arrive in the same condition. I hope that answers the question.
Sophie. One question from PNG. What are the fumigation requirements for timber exports to Australia?
That's a very good question. I might just take that one on notice because timber can... I need some more information, essentially. I need to understand what state the timber's in, the size of it, whether the proposal is to have bark on it or not, because it can't be imported with bark, but also the size of the sawn timber can impact on the condition. So I just need a bit more information to be able to answer that question correctly.
Okay, Sophie, we'll go back.
Take it offline. Yeah.
Yep, take it offline and get more information for you. One of the questions that actually came up in the chat was regarding when you spoke about giant taro not allowed into Australia, and the question being, why is that?
So giant taro, and I'm sorry I've forgotten the Latin name, but it's listed on a schedule in the food safety code. So essentially with advice from FSAN, so our Australia's and New Zealand's Food Safety Authority, they've determined that it's too toxic to be imported into Australia commercially. It is able to be imported though for personal use.
Thank you. For small Pacific exporters of value-added products such as natural soaps, coconut oil products, and plant-based cosmetics, are you able to outline the complete biosecurity approval pathway for entering the Australian market? I know you did touch on it a bit in the presentation, so did Brad, for them entering into the Australian market.
Yes, so in terms of the biosecurity requirements, they're listed in BICON, and it does relate to the formulation. I know you said they're plant-based, so it might be a little bit easier if it doesn't have a combination of plant and animal-derived ingredients. But in terms of the particular labelling requirements that might be required by other departments, those I can't provide information on today. We'd have to seek advice from other agencies. But I would say it could be similar to Carver, for example, where it was actually a collaboration with Department of Health as well as our department, because if it's a cosmetic, there might be some labelling requirements, things you can say, things you can't say on the label that relate to other Australian laws. So I will have to get some more information for those ones too. But in terms of the biosecurity requirements, they're in BICON. If you look under that cosmetics and soaps case that Brad had in his example and is linked in my presentation.
Thank you, Sophie. A question from Tonga regarding, and it's a bit broad, regarding import requirements for agricultural products.
Yeah.
Which products from Tonga have the greatest export potential market? That's more of a commercial question. Maybe just touch on biosecurity.
Sure. So for products from Tonga, I know, for example, there's the Tongan watermelons to New Zealand, and I think the main conditions relate to fruit fly. We would have similar conditions depending on the commodity. If it was a fruit and a fruit fly host, there would be conditions or measures or treatments to remove that risk before they could be imported. We do import yam from Tonga. They also have specific requirements. Again, the Ministry of Agriculture in Tonga has to provide certification for those exported yams. But yes, that's a bit broad, and it does depend, whether it's a root crop processed at all, or whether it's a fruit or vegetable crop. So it's not as easy in BICON to put in a country and see what access a particular country has. It is a commodity-based database, so you do need to search each commodity and see what the conditions are depending on the country you're from.
Question from Vanuatu regarding the export of uncooked prawns to Australia for human consumption. Can they transship prawns via Australia to another country?
Oh, the transship bit, I'm unsure, but importing uncooked prawns from Vanuatu is not possible. So the only approved country from the Pacific for uncooked prawn import is New Caledonia at this stage. Again, in BICON, if you search for prawn, there's an uncooked prawn page, and you have to then work through some additional questions to see if you're from an approved country or not. The transshipped, I would have to confirm, but generally things that are not entering Australia will not need to, if they're not unloaded in Australia, then they don't usually enter Australia. That goes for any commodity. But if there is some different process happening in Australia that have to be imported first into Australia, which at this point is not possible.
Thank you, Sophie. And a question from French Polynesia. An exporter or a person from French Polynesia would like to personally deliver pandanus hats to their customers, which have been pre-sold prior to shipment. These hats are fitted with leather hat bands, decorated mother of pearl shell medallions, and pearl inlays. What would be the biosecurity requirements and the steps needed to be taken for this type of product to be exported to enter Australia? And I know you touched on handicrafts at the end of your presentation.
Yes. So the question that goes with this one, just from experience, is understanding whether the pandanus has been processed at all, or whether it's dried, for example, or whether it's in a more fresh state. If it's fresh, it's a bit more of a problem, but if it has been processed and is more of a look dried, then that's a different matter. From the animal product perspective, as long as the leather is tanned, that shouldn't be a problem. If it's rawhide, then that is an issue and isn't able to be imported. And then again, with the pearl shell, if they're inlays, they're generally highly processed. But again, with that one, from the plant product perspective, we just need a bit more information about what level of processing that, or how fresh that pandanus component is, before we're able to provide advice. But generally, if it's a handicraft like that, it can be imported, it needs to be declared, and then it's inspected. But it does relate to the greenness of the plant product.
Thank you, Sophie. We have one question for PNG for VCO. What would be the requirements, biosecurity requirements to export to Australia?
Sorry, for which commodity was that?
VCO, virgin coconut oil.
Oh, so coconut oil, again, has conditions. I don't have them up in front of me. But because it's processed, I think that's just the normal, needs to be like the containers that the oil is in needs to be clean and free of contamination of any kind, like soil or other things on the drums. The importing fresh coconut, where you've got the whole nut with kind of still that fibrous husk on the outside, the parts that go brown, the nut and that husk is the bit that has the biosecurity issue. Once it's been pressed and you're just moving the oil, there's no biosecurity risk related to the oil itself. It'd then move to ensuring that whatever's housing the oil is clean and labelled correctly.
Thank you. And we have one again from PNG regarding natural skincare products, and this would probably be similar with the virgin coconut oil, and also depending what's the contents, what would be the requirements to export to Australia?
Yeah, so again, it from a biosecurity perspective, if it's just a plant-based product, it's relatively easy, and BICON will step you through going through each of the ingredients in your formulation. But then it may just be related to any of the labelling requirements on that product.
And one last one about traceability. Is that important regards to plant products when exporting to Australia?
So I'll do my best with my imported horticulture friends online. So for a lot of imported fresh product, traceability is important, and the way that the products are traced, I guess, back to the farm through the whole supply chain to Australia is documented in the work plan that sits underneath the pest risk analysis, and it's negotiated with the relevant biosecurity agency in that particular country. So if it was Fiji, for example, a work plan for a particular commodity would be negotiated with Biosecurity Authority of Fiji, and part of that work plan may include things like farmer registration and property registrations, so that depending on what the commodity is and depending on what the certification requirements are, of course, but doing farmer or grower and property registrations is how traceability would be facilitated for that particular commodity, and then that would, though, tie back to a biosecurity requirement. So it's if something's found when it's imported into Australia, we're able to understand if you're pooling a lot of different harvested crops from a number of growers, it helps understand what might have gone wrong in the supply chain. But traceability from a biosecurity perspective, yes, is an issue for some commodities, depending on what they are. The other thing I just did want to touch on, I guess, is if it's plant products, and this goes, I guess, to the timber question as well, and some of the imports of animal products. There are also other certification requirements like CITES, for example, that ensures that there are no endangered species being traded around the world. So traceability from a CITES perspective is also kind of another adjacent issue, depending on what you're considering trading. But from a biosecurity issue, in short, yes, it can be an issue, and it's dealt with in the work plan.
Sophie, and one final question, salt from PNG, what would be the import requirements?
Sorry, was that salt?
Yes, salt. Fiji. Sorry, not Fiji, PNG, my apologies.
Salt from PNG. That's one I'd have to check. There'd be no biosecurity requirements per se on the salt, but it might depend on where it's come from. It's because that we do have requirements for, say, fertilizer, for example, which is a little bit different, but the only thing I can think of that's kind of similar from a formulation perspective immediately. So I'll have to get back to you on the salt question.
I think Chris Dale's eager to answer that one.
Oh, thank you. I didn't have an answer specifically for salt, but just concur with Sophie's advice there. I guess just noting time, there's been some really good questions coming through on the online chat. The two questions I thought were really relevant to everyone right across the countries and the stakeholder group. One from PNG: how do PRAs get initiated for PNG, given there's only a small number of plant products that are currently on the list for approval? So pest risk assessments, they don't get initiated by, I guess, sort of on an ad hoc basis. It needs to go through the National Plant Protection Organisation or the Biosecurity Authority. So I very much encourage you, if you do have a product, you have the supply chain, you have the market established from a commercial perspective, to reach out to your biosecurity counterparts. In for PNG's case, it'll be the PNG Biosecurity Authority through the Chief Plant Protection Office to initiate that process and those bilateral discussions and negotiations, given that a pest risk assessment process is very lengthy, it's very detailed, and there's a whole range of information and data that needs to be consolidated and reviewed and analysed as part of that. So it's a very detailed process, but that gets initiated through your biosecurity agency or organisation in country. Second question that I thought was really useful around what is the difference between commercial and private consumption? So as Sophie and Brad indicated, there's different requirements for products. Some products are allowed and approved for private or non-commercial importation, and some aren't. And likewise, there's different conditions applied against the private or personal consumption and commercial. So that's very much based on a commodity. It's very specific to commodities. It's not generic across all commodity types. There are specific conditions around products like betel nut. And obviously there's a lot of trade into Australia through airport, through passengers, on aircraft and airport movements for those very small commodities. That said, each commodity is treated on the nature of the risk. And for certain countries, there needs to be certification associated with every one of those personal consignments. And in other cases, they may not. So again, it's not a generic conditions across all countries, across all commodities. It's very specific, but I guess the key consideration between commercial and personal usage and consumption is really around volume, quantity, and end use as well. So encourage you to look at the BICON conditions for a particular commodity because it does provide that clarification on the two different commercial and personal use requirements and conditions. Thank you, Maeva.
Thank you, Chris. Those are some great questions, and thank you to Sophie and the Imports team for their valuable insights and for addressing them. As advised, if your question wasn't asked today, please send it through to us and we'll make sure it's addressed at a later stage. We've heard today that getting a product into Australia is about more than producing a great product. Exporters need to understand market access requirements, documentation, certification, compliance obligations, and buyer expectations. The question for many businesses is, what happens next? How do you take that information and apply it to your own business? This is where PTI can help. Our role is not to regulate trade or determine market access pathways. Instead, we work alongside exporters to help them understand markets, build export readiness, connect with buyers, and navigate the practical steps involved in entering new markets. We generally support exporters through 4 key areas. First, market visits. These help businesses understand buyer expectations, market trends, and in-market opportunities. Second, export advice. This helps businesses refine their products, strengthen export readiness, and better position themselves for international markets. Third, trade shows. These create opportunities to showcase products, gain market feedback, and connect directly with buyers and distributors. And fourth, capacity building, like today's webinar, helping exporters build knowledge, capability, so they can make informed decisions about export opportunities. No single activity turns a business into an exporter overnight, but taken together, these services help businesses build confidence, reduce risk, and move progressively along the export journey. And to show what that looks like in practice, I'd like to share a few examples of recent work we've undertaken with exporters across the Pacific. One example of PTI's practical trade facilitation work is our biomission program. In May 2025, PTI Australia led a trade and biomission to Solomon Islands, engaging with exporters across sectors including cacao, copra, seaweed, and skincare. The mission included visits by Australian chocolate makers, practical workshops with local businesses, and visits to cacao farms, as shown on the slide. Activities like these help exporters understand buyer expectations, identify gaps in export readiness, receive direct market feedback, and build relationships with potential customers. They also help PTI identify where further support is needed and create direct links between Pacific producers and Australian buyers. The impact doesn't stop when the mission ends. Following this engagement, one of the cacao producers went on to participate in the Australian Chocolate Festival with PTI support, providing further exposure to buyers, industry experts, and consumers. Ultimately, our goal is to help businesses move from being export curious to export ready, and from export ready to export active. Once we have identified promising export ready businesses through activities such as biomissions and market visits, the next step is helping them build visibility and commercial connections in market. Trade shows play an important role in that process. Through our management of the Pacific Showcase at Fine Food Australia, PTI supports Pacific exporters to participate in Australia's largest food industry event, helping them meet buyers, gather market feedback, and better understand what distributors and consumers are looking for. The companies on screen today participated in last year's event and showcased the diversity of Pacific exports, including kawa and cacao from Papua New Guinea, coffee and rum from Vanuatu, vanilla from Fiji and Niue, and a range of sauces and condiments from Fiji. And this August, we'll bring 15 more Pacific food and beverage companies to Melbourne for the Fine Food Trade Show, continuing that same pathway from export readiness to active market engagement. Events like Fine Food Australia provide a platform for exporters to showcase their products, test market interests, and establish new commercial relationships. For many businesses, a trade show isn't the end goal, it's a stepping stone. It's an opportunity to validate demand, strengthen buyer relationships, and build a pathway to sustainable exports. This is core business for PTI, connecting Pacific businesses directly with buyers, distributors, and industry partners, and helping turn export potential into real commercial outcomes. Darwin Ketsian, owner of DJ Organic Produce in Bougainville, Papua New Guinea, participated in the Australian Chocolate Festival with PTI support, showcasing her Gigova chocolate brand to consumers, buyers, and industry experts. Through the event, Darwin received direct market feedback, built industry connections, and gained valuable insights into chocolate production. packaging, and product presentation for export markets. Her experience highlights that export readiness is not only about meeting compliance requirements, but also about understanding customer expectations, refining products, and building confidence in market. While trade shows provide valuable face-to-face opportunities with buyers, not every business is ready to attend an international event. That's why PTI also invests in exporter capability through online training and digital enablement. Over the past year, we've delivered webinars on topics including social media, digital services, AI, export readiness, and today's focus, biosecurity and market access. These sessions provide practical advice that businesses can apply immediately, and we've seen strong participation from companies across the Pacific. Beyond training, PTI also supports exporters through initiatives such as our Website Accelerator program, helping businesses strengthen their online presence and better present their products to international buyers. Earlier this year, we worked with Green Forest Oils from Vanuatu to help enhance its digital presence and better showcase its products to overseas customers. Together, these initiatives help businesses build capability, navigate market requirements, and take the next step in their export journey. Thank you for joining us today. We hope this session has provided practical insights into Australian biosecurity requirements and the opportunities available for Pacific exporters. Pacific products are already succeeding in Australia, and with the right preparation, market knowledge, and connections, there is significant potential for businesses across the region. We'll share a copy of today's slides along with information on PTI services and our upcoming 2026 Imports from the Pacific report, which highlights trade between Pacific Island countries and Australia using Australian government import data. We also encourage you to stay connected through the PTI website and newsletter to hear about future webinars, trade shows, bio-emissions, and other opportunities for exporters. Once again, sincere thanks to Chris Dale, Director of International Capacity Development, Dr. Sophie Peterson, Director of Pacific Engagement and International Plant Health, and Brad Small, Technical Officer in DAFF's Horticulture Imports Program within the Plant Division, for their participation in today's webinar and for making this event possible. Thank you once again for your time and participation. We appreciate your engagement and look forward to continuing to support Pacific businesses as they grow and access new market opportunities.